All right, now the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to focus on building embeddings. Okay, now here in chunker.py, we have already created the chunks. Now those chunks needs to be embedded. Okay, and we're going to create a vector embedding, and that is what we'll be using either text embedding 3 small or text embedding 3 large model. Okay, what is vector embedding? It's nothing but it's basically a numerical representation, okay, of your token. It's a list of floating point numbers. Okay, for example, heart attack and myocardial infarction would be right next to each other even though the words look completely different, and this is, in such cases, vector embeddings come in very handy. Okay, so now here we have written, sorry, I think I've already decided to go ahead with 3 small. Okay, now when it comes to 3 large as an embedding model, it is going to roughly take around 3072 dimensions. Okay, but PG vectors HNSW index, this is a very interesting concept, please read up, has a limit of 200 dimensions. That's the hard limit, so we need to stay within that limit, and that is the reason we're going to go with 3 small. 3 small has roughly 1536 dimensions. Okay, why don't we embed one chunk at a time? We're going to perform batching. So basically, if we send one API call per chunk, right, it's a idiotic decision to go for 300 API calls for 300 chunks. It's going to be slow, it's going to be expensive. So that is the reason we're going to perform batching. We're not going to run this file. You can see we're going to create the embedder object here, and we're going to apply that embedder object using embed chunk on the list of text chunks that we have created using chunker.py. Okay, so without wasting much time, let's get started. So I'm going to start with importing async IO. Then from data class, I'm going to import data classes. I'm going to import data class. Then from OpenAI, what I'll do is I'll import async OpenAI. Okay. So async OpenAI is, your OpenAI's official async Python client. Okay. Then I'll just say from processing.chunker, I'm going to import text chunk. Okay. Now we receive text chunk objects as input that we have created in chunker.py, and we're going to return something called as the embed chunk objects. Okay. So what we're going to do is, let me write it here. Okay, we will be receiving text chunk objects as an input, and we return something called as embedded chunk objects. Okay, so that is what we'll be importing. So here I'll just say from config.settings import settings, and then I'll just say from config.loginconfig import setup logging, and then I'll just create a logger here. Yeah, looks good. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to define the configuration. In configuration, typically I will be defining the batch size. Okay, let's say I'm going to keep it 50. Then number of retry. Okay, so the retry attempts, I'm going to set it to 3, and retry sleep seconds, I am going to maybe set it to 2. So retry attempts is what? This is basically how many times, I'll just write it here, how many times to retry a failed embedding API call. Okay, OpenAI occasionally returns 4 to 9, which is the rate limit, or 500 server error, and retrying automatically handles such transient failures. Okay, so we're going to do that 3 times. Okay, followed by retry sleep second equals to 2, which means how long to wait between the 2 retry attempts. We're going to give a 2-second window. Okay, now let us go and build the embedded chunk class. Okay, this is what we're going to build. So I'll just say data class. Okay, and then I'll say class embedded chunk. Okay, and then what does this class take into consideration, and what does it represent? Okay, so a text chunk has been enriched into a vector embedding, and this is what gets saved, okay, to the Cloud SQL. Now on Cloud SQL we have created the chunks table, okay, the table that we have created on Cloud SQL, right? So every field from text chunk is carried over. Okay, and what are the fields that we're going to have in the Cloud SQL? Okay, so we're going to, when a chunk is getting vectorized, what are the fields we're taking into consideration? Chunk ID, NCT ID, chunk text, chunk index, source, word count, and embedding. Okay, so I'll just put in here, we're going to take the chunk ID, we're going to take the NCT ID, we're going to take the chunk text, chunk index, we're going to take the source, we're going to take the word count, and we're going to also take the embedding. Now embedding is obviously a list of floating point numbers, so it is given. Okay, after this I'm just going to define the embedder class. So I'll just say define class embedder. Okay, and what is this embedder about? Let us also define or discuss that. Okay, now here, okay, what does this class do? This class converts the text chunk objects that we have in chunker.py into embedded chunks using OpenAI's text embedding 3 small. It processes chunks in batches of whatever batch size that we have discussed. Here we have decided 50. That is for efficiency purposes, and automatically retries failed API calls up to the number of attempts that we have defined. Okay, cool. So here what I'll do is, first and foremost, I'll define this thing. I'm just going to create an async OpenAI client. Okay, and this async OpenAI client takes the API key. Okay, and this client is basically reused for every API call in this session. Okay, for more efficient than creating a new client per batch. Okay, so this looks good, and then then I'll just say self dot model, and for model I'm just going to pass in the embedding model. Okay, here, so this is, we will be using text embedding 3 small, right? So let me just fetch the comments. Okay, looks good. So now the embedding model name, we're going to fetch it from .env. We're going to use text embedding 3 small, and that is stored as an instance variable. Okay, all right, let us also log this. Okay, so I'll just say embedder initialized with the model, and whichever model it will define it here. Fine, looks good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to embed a list of chunks, right? So I'll create a function called async def, and I'll create a function called as embed chunks. Okay, which takes the list of text chunks, okay, and gives me a list of an embedded. So basically it will take all the chunks, list of all the textual chunks, and give me a list of the embedded chunks. It's very straightforward as to what does it do. Okay, so it just converts a list of text chunk into embedded chunks. So it is going to split the input into a batch size, whatever, 50 words, okay, 50 tokens. It is going to process each and every batch. That is broadly what it is going to do. Okay, so let me just remove this as of now. We don't need this. Later when you get the documented code, you will find that. Okay, so if not chunks, I'll just say here, in case if there are no chunks, then I'll just wage a warning here. I'll just say no chunks provided to embed, and it is going to return an empty list. Okay, and then I'll just say logger dot warning. Okay, and I'll just say let me write it this way, starting embedding. Okay, and I'll just say starting embedding, and just a minute. Then first and foremost, it is going to tell me how many total number of chunks are there, and then it will tell me the batch size and the this is not required, we can just take the model, okay, which is what looks good. All right, so what does it give in return? It is going to say that, hey, we have started the embedding, these many chunks are getting embedded, this is the batch size, and this is the model that we're going to use. Okay, now we need what I'll do is I'll create an empty list called all embedded. Okay, and what does this empty list do? It is going to accumulate all the results across all the batches. Okay, so I'll just say that it is going to be a list of embedded chunk. Okay, this is what it is going to be. Okay, and then for batches, what I'll do is I'll create a function, a helper method later called create batches, which I'm going to apply on the chunks. Okay, looks fine. Okay, now what this will do, it will take this entire list, and the entire list of chunks, and it is going to just put it in the smaller batches. Okay, so I'll just kind of apply a for loop, which is for batch number comma batch. Okay, in enumerate batches. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am basically going to iterate over all the batches. I'm going to take individual batch number and the batch. What does this batch contain? It contains the chunked text. Okay, I'm going to say logger.info. Okay, and I'm just going to put in, let me just take the function directly from my notebook here. Yeah, just a minute, it's not going good, just give me a minute please. All right, let me take it from here. Okay, so I'll just kind of replace it here for better understanding. Okay, yeah, this looks fine. Okay, now if you see here, yeah, I'm going to iterate over all the batches, and then I'm going to look at the embedding batch. Okay, it is going to increment the batch divided by the length of the batches, and it is going to tell us how many chunks are there in each and every batch. Okay, then what we're going to do is finally we're going to apply a helper method called as embed batch with retry on the batch and the batch number, and we're going to get an embedded batch, which means for every for every chunk, right, we're going to, sorry, for every batch is going to contain different chunks. Those different chunks will be then embedded, and then they'll be stored into something called as embedded batch. Okay, and we're going to take this all embedded empty list that we have created here at the top. Okay, where is it? Here, and we're going to extend all of them. Okay, now if that particular batch number is lesser than length of batches, okay, we're just going to sleep for, I mean, this is like a very standard code. Okay, I mean, it's self-explanatory that we're just going to keep a small pause between the batches, roughly 0.5 seconds. Okay, and then we're going to log it, and we're going to return the all embedded chunk. Okay, now let us go to the next method. Okay, where what we're going to do is, I'll just take it here. Okay, in the next method, okay, what we're going to do is we are going to embed one batch. Okay, I think before that also we have a function. Yes, I think here we have a private method which is going to help us create the batches. What does it take in the input? It takes the list of textual chunks. What does it give? It gives a list of textual chunks. Okay, so it splits a flat test of a flat list of chunks into smaller batches. Okay, it is going to take a flat list of chunks, and it is again going to put it in a smaller batches. It's basically going to perform batching, nothing as the name suggests, right? It is going to take the chunk, it is going to create the batches out of it. So 150 chunks with batch size 50, right? For example, look at the first batch size, 50 chunks, second batch size 50 chunks, third batch size 50 chunks. That is what it is going to do. What does it work with as an argument level? It takes the chunks as in the list of all the chunks that is going to split. What does it return? It returns a list of lists. This is what it returns, a list of lists which individually contains different batches. Okay, we're going to have one more method which is embed one batch with retry. Okay, this is a helper method that we have already created. We're going to keep it async in nature. What does it take in input? It takes a batch, a list of text chunk objects. It takes the batch number, and what does it give in the output? It gives a list of embedded chunks. So it embeds one batch of chunks retrying on failure. So it attempts the embedding on retry attempt times. I mean, retry attempts, we have defined it 3, right? So it is going to attempt to embed those many times. It is going to wait for 3 seconds in between. I think we have defined to 3 or 2, whatever. What does it return? It returns an empty list if all the attempts fail. Okay, now this helper function, what does it do? It embeds the batches with the retry. So what does it take into consideration? 2 things: the batch, which means one single batch, and the batch number. That is only for logging purposes. And what does it return? It returns a list of embedded chunks for this particular batch. So we're going to iterate every single time. You can see the retry attempts are increasing. It goes 1 to 3, right? I mean, it's fairly obvious. Yeah. And finally, what do we get? Okay, we're going to apply this helper function on the batch. Okay, and that is what we're going to get in the output. Okay, in case if there's an exception, it is going to catch the exception, else it is just going to log the error. Okay, in that case, what does it return? It returns an empty list. The final helper method that we're going to focus on is where we're going to embed one batch. So I'm going to create an async function which is embed a batch. So it takes a batch. A batch is nothing but a list of textual chunk objects, and what does it give in return? It gives me a list of embedded chunk. Okay, finally embed batch function. Okay, this just checks on one single batch. Okay, so this makes one API call to embed an entire batch of chunks. Okay, and this is the method that actually talks to OpenAI. It sends up to the batch size, like whatever batch size you have defined, it sends them to the API in one requests. And what does it get? It gets one embedding per chunk. Okay, so you can see we've just created a list comprehension here. We are just iterating over all the chunks in the batches, and from that chunk we're going to extract the chunk text. So for every chunk, we're going to take that text, we're going to put this in a variable called as text. Yeah, we're going to store that there. Yeah, so we're just going to extract just text from each chunk. Okay, and then we're going to just say self.client. Okay, embeddings.create. We're basically going to create the embeddings. Okay, here we're going to pass the model, which is nothing but the embedding model. At the input level, we're going to pass the text, which is nothing but the text that we've extracted from the chunks. Okay, and yeah, that generates a response. What is a response? Response is nothing but the one embedding object per input text. As simple as that. Okay, for example, if you look at response.data at the 0th index position dot embedding, this is nothing but the first list of 1536 numbers. Okay, so on and so forth. Okay, here I have created an empty list called as embedded chunks. Okay, we're going to iterate. Okay, if you see here, I'm going to apply this embedded chunk class that we have created here. Okay, we're going to create an object, and these are all the things that we're going to take into consideration. So when we get an embedded chunk, what are the fields that we get with the associated embedded chunk? These are all the fields that we get, and that embedded chunk gets appended to the embedded chunks empty list that we have created here. Okay, we log it and we just return the embedded chunks. Fantastic, guys. So that is typically how your embedder works. Okay, so all in all, how your embedder is working, it is going to take all the text. Okay, after it takes all the text, or it is going to text as in it is going to take the text from all the chunks, and then for each and every, it is going to be converted to batch, and then for each and every batch you will be having an individual list which is of 1536 dimensions, which means one single batch is going to have or will be converted into a 1536 dimension vector. Okay, so you can see I'll just write it here for your understanding. Now here what is going to be happening, one batch is converted into a list of embedded chunk objects, each with embedding vector attached, which is 1536 dimensions. Okay, so cool. That is, so you can see 1536 dimension vector representing the meaning of each chunk. All right, in the next video, let us focus on building the vector store. Yeah, thanks.